Question 1. Assessment of the most effective approach to identifying and managing potential risks in a large-scale IT project undertaken by a global service provider, considering the need for both comprehensive coverage and practical implementation. Option A. A structured, iterative process involving comprehensive risk identification across relevant categories, followed by analysis of likelihood and impact, prioritization, and the development of mitigation and contingency plans, with ongoing review and updates. Option B. A purely theoretical framework that outlines numerous potential risks but lacks practical guidance for implementation or integration into project workflows. Option C. A reactive approach that focuses solely on addressing risks as they arise during project execution, without proactive identification or planning. Option D. A methodology that prioritizes only risks with the highest potential financial impact, disregarding other categories of risk or their likelihood of occurrence. The correct answer is A. A structured, iterative process involving comprehensive risk identification across relevant categories, followed by analysis of likelihood and impact, prioritization, and the development of mitigation and contingency plans, with ongoing review and updates. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires a nuanced understanding of risk assessment methodologies within the specific context of a large IT services company like TCS. The challenge lies in balancing the need for comprehensive risk identification with the practical constraints of time, resources, and the dynamic nature of technology projects. A superficial or overly simplistic approach to risk assessment can lead to overlooking critical vulnerabilities, resulting in project delays, cost overruns, reputational damage, or even security breaches. Conversely, an overly complex or theoretical approach might be impractical to implement and maintain. Therefore, careful judgment is required to select and apply an appropriate risk assessment framework that is both effective and efficient. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a structured, iterative process that begins with identifying potential risks across various categories relevant to IT projects, e.g., technical, operational, security, financial, human resources. This identification should be followed by an analysis of the likelihood and impact of each identified risk. Subsequently, risks should be prioritized based on their potential severity, allowing for the allocation of resources to mitigate the most critical ones. The process should also include the development of mitigation strategies and contingency plans, and crucially, it must be an ongoing activity, with regular reviews and updates to account for changes in the project environment or the emergence of new risks. This iterative and comprehensive approach aligns with best professional practices for risk management, emphasizing proactive identification, evaluation, and control, which are implicitly expected in any robust operational framework for a company like TCS, aiming for quality and reliability in its service delivery. While specific regulations for TCS's internal hiring assessment are not provided, the principles of sound risk management are universally applicable and form the bedrock of professional conduct in the IT sector. Incorrect approaches analysis, focusing solely on known, historical risks without considering emerging threats or novel vulnerabilities, represents a failure to adapt and maintain a current risk profile. This approach is professionally unacceptable because it creates blind spots and leaves the project susceptible to unforeseen issues, violating the principle of due diligence in risk management. Prioritizing only high-impact risks while ignoring those with a high probability of occurrence, even if their individual impact is moderate, is also a flawed strategy. This can lead to a situation where numerous small, frequent problems accumulate, collectively causing significant disruption. Ethically and professionally, a balanced consideration of both likelihood and impact is essential for effective risk mitigation. Implementing a risk assessment framework that is overly theoretical and disconnected from the practical realities of project execution is another failure. Such an approach, while perhaps academically sound, is unlikely to be adopted or effectively utilized by project teams, rendering the entire exercise futile and a waste of resources. This demonstrates a lack of practical application and an inability to translate theoretical concepts into actionable insights, which is a critical professional failing in a service delivery environment. Professional reasoning. Professionals should approach risk assessment by adopting a systematic and adaptable methodology. This involves 1. Establishing clear objectives for the risk assessment, aligned with project goals. 2. Employing a combination of qualitative and quantitative techniques where appropriate, but always prioritizing practical applicability. 3. Involving relevant stakeholders from different functional areas to ensure a comprehensive perspective. 4. Documenting all identified risks, their analysis and mitigation plans. 5. Establishing a schedule for regular review and updates. And 6. Fostering a culture where risk identification and reporting are encouraged and valued. This structured yet flexible approach ensures that risk management is an integral part of the project lifecycle, rather than a perfunctory exercise. Question 2. Comparative studies suggest that in large-scale hiring assessments, the effectiveness of risk assessment methodologies can vary significantly. Considering the need for both efficiency and thoroughness in evaluating candidates for roles involving access to sensitive client data, which of the following approaches to risk assessment is most aligned with robust professional practice and potential regulatory expectations for a global IT services firm? Option A. Conducting a brief, informal risk assessment that focuses only on the candidate's technical skills and past project experience, assuming that strong technical abilities negate other potential risks. Option B. Implementing a multi-stage risk assessment process that includes background verification, behavioral assessment, and role-specific security clearance checks, with findings systematically documented and reviewed by a dedicated risk management team. Option C. Relying primarily on the candidate's self-reported risk factors and the hiring manager's immediate impression during the interview to gauge suitability. Option D. Utilizing a standardized checklist of common risks without tailoring it to the specific role or the sensitivity of the data the candidate might access, and accepting the results without further scrutiny. The correct answer is B. Implementing a multi-stage risk assessment process that includes background verification, behavioral assessments, and role-specific security clearance checks, with findings systematically documented and reviewed by a dedicated risk management team. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the need for comprehensive risk assessment with the practical constraints of time and resources inherent in a large-scale hiring process. The pressure to quickly identify suitable candidates for a global organization like TCS can lead to shortcuts that compromise the thoroughness of risk assessment, potentially overlooking critical vulnerabilities. Careful judgment is required to ensure that risk assessment remains a robust and integral part of the hiring process, rather than a perfunctory step. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a systematic and documented methodology for risk assessment, aligning with the principles of good corporate governance and the implicit expectations of regulatory bodies overseeing employment practices and data security. A structured approach ensures that risks are identified, analyzed, and mitigated in a consistent and repeatable manner. This not only enhances the quality of hiring decisions, but also provides a defensible record in case of future disputes or compliance audits. Adhering to established risk assessment frameworks, such as those that might be referenced in internal TCS policies or general best practices for IT service providers, demonstrates a commitment to due diligence and responsible hiring. An incorrect approach that relies solely on superficial checks or anecdotal evidence fails to meet professional standards. Such an approach would be ethically questionable, as it could lead to the hiring of individuals who pose a risk to the organization's intellectual property, client data, or operational integrity. From a regulatory perspective, this could be seen as a failure of due diligence, potentially violating data protection laws, e.g., GDPR if applicable to TCS's operations or client data, or industry-specific compliance requirements that mandate robust vetting of personnel. Another incorrect approach that focuses only on technical skills without considering behavioral or background risks is equally problematic. While technical proficiency is crucial, it does not guarantee an individual's trustworthiness or adherence to ethical standards. This oversight could expose TCS and its clients to significant reputational damage, financial loss, or legal liabilities. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a clear understanding of the organization's risk appetite, the specific roles being filled, and the potential impact of a compromised hire. This involves 1. Defining the scope and objectives of the risk assessment for each role. 2. Identifying relevant risk categories, e.g., technical behavioral background security. 3. Selecting appropriate assessment methodologies and tools. 4. Establishing clear criteria for evaluating risks and making decisions. 5. Documenting the entire process and the rationale behind decisions. 6. Regularly reviewing and updating risk assessment procedures to reflect evolving threats and best practices. Question 3. The control framework reveals that a significant number of potential risks have been identified across various business units. To expedite the risk assessment process, which of the following approaches would best align with robust risk management principles and regulatory expectations for a company like Tata Consultancy Services? Option A. Prioritize risks based on a comprehensive evaluation of both their likelihood of occurrence and their potential impact, developing tailored mitigation strategies for each. Option B. Rely solely on historical risk data from the past 5 years, without considering any new or emerging threats. Option C. Concentrate only on risks that can be easily measured and quantified, disregarding qualitative risks such as reputational damage. Option D. Focus exclusively on risks with the highest potential financial impact, assuming that other risks are less critical. Correct answer is D. Focus exclusively on risks with the highest potential financial impact, assuming that other risks are less critical. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the need for efficient risk identification with the imperative of thoroughness and adherence to established control frameworks. The pressure to deliver a comprehensive risk assessment quickly can lead to shortcuts that compromise the integrity of the process. Careful judgment is required to ensure that the assessment is both timely and robust, meeting regulatory expectations and internal governance standards. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it systematically addresses all identified risks, categorizes them according to their potential impact and likelihood, and proposes mitigation strategies aligned with the organization's risk appetite. This aligns with the principles of good corporate governance and risk management, which are often implicitly or explicitly mandated by regulatory bodies overseeing financial institutions and large corporations. By prioritizing risks and developing tailored responses, it ensures that resources are allocated effectively to manage the most significant threats. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on high-impact risks without considering their likelihood fails to provide a balanced view of the risk landscape. This can lead to misallocation of resources, as significant but low-probability risks might be overlooked, while less critical but highly probable risks consume undue attention. This approach may also violate regulatory guidelines that require a comprehensive assessment of all material risks, regardless of their perceived impact in isolation. Another incorrect approach that prioritizes only easily quantifiable risks neglects qualitative risks, such as reputational damage or regulatory noncompliance, which can have profound consequences. Regulatory frameworks often emphasize the importance of considering all types of risks, not just those amenable to simple numerical analysis. Overlooking these qualitative factors can lead to significant unforeseen liabilities and breaches of ethical conduct. A further incorrect approach that relies solely on historical data without considering emerging threats or changes in the business environment is also professionally unacceptable. Risk assessment must be forward-looking. Regulatory expectations generally demand that organizations proactively identify and manage evolving risks. Sticking rigidly to past data without adaptation can result in a failure to anticipate and mitigate new vulnerabilities, potentially leading to significant operational and financial disruptions. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured approach. 1. Understand the scope and objectives of the risk assessment, referencing relevant internal policies and any applicable regulatory guidance. 2. Identify all potential risks across various categories: operational, financial, strategic, compliance, etc. 3. For each identified risk, assess its likelihood and potential impact, considering both quantitative and qualitative factors. 4. Prioritize risks based on the assessment, considering the organization's risk appetite. 5. Develop appropriate mitigation or treatment strategies for prioritized risks. 6. Document the entire process, including assumptions, methodologies, and conclusions, to ensure transparency and auditability. 7. Regularly review and update the risk assessment to reflect changes in the internal and external environment. Question 4. To address the challenge of a client relying on a critical but significantly outdated legacy system that is no longer supported by its vendor, Which of the following approaches best balances immediate operational continuity with long-term risk mitigation and regulatory compliance? Option A. Implement a phased migration plan, gradually replacing modules of the legacy system with modern, supported solutions while ensuring robust testing and user training at each stage. Option B. Suggest the client invest in extensive custom patching and security hardening of the existing legacy system to extend its lifespan indefinitely. Option C. Immediately mandate a complete, big bang replacement of the entire legacy system with a new, state-of-the-art solution, regardless of the potential for immediate operational disruption. Option D. Advise the client to continue operating the legacy system with increased monitoring and manual workarounds, deferring any significant changes until a critical failure occurs. Correct answer is A. Implement a phased migration plan, gradually replacing modules of the legacy system with modern, supported solutions while ensuring robust testing and user training at each stage. Explanation. The scenario presents a common challenge in IT consulting where a client's existing, but outdated, system is deemed critical for ongoing operations. The challenge lies in balancing the immediate need for system stability with the long-term risks associated with maintaining legacy technology. A professional consultant must assess the client's risk appetite, regulatory environment, and business objectives to recommend the most appropriate course of action. The correct approach prioritizes a phased migration strategy. This represents best professional practice because it mitigates immediate operational disruption while systematically addressing the technical debt. It aligns with principles of responsible IT governance, which advocate for proactive risk management and planned obsolescence. From a regulatory perspective, depending on the industry, there might be requirements for data integrity, security, and business continuity that a legacy system could jeopardize over time. A phased approach allows for continuous compliance checks and ensures that new systems meet current standards before full deployment. Ethically, it demonstrates a commitment to the client's long-term success and avoids imposing a sudden, potentially damaging, change. An incorrect approach would be to immediately recommend a complete system overhaul without a thorough assessment. This fails to acknowledge the client's operational dependencies and could lead to significant business disruption, potentially violating contractual obligations for service continuity. It also ignores the financial and resource implications for the client, which is a failure of due diligence. Another incorrect approach would be to simply advise continued maintenance of the legacy system indefinitely. This neglects the increasing security vulnerabilities, lack of vendor support, and potential for catastrophic failure inherent in outdated technology. This approach fails to uphold the professional duty to advise clients on emerging risks and best practices, potentially exposing them to significant financial and reputational damage. It also overlooks potential regulatory noncompliance as systems age and standards evolve. The professional decision-making process for similar situation should involve a comprehensive risk assessment, including technical, operational, financial, and regulatory factors. This should be followed by a thorough analysis of potential solutions, evaluating their feasibility, cost-effectiveness, and alignment with the client's strategic goals. Open and transparent communication with the client, presenting a clear rationale for recommendations and outlining potential consequences of each option, is paramount. The decision should be a collaborative one, informed by expert advice and the client's ultimate business objectives. Question 5. Cost-benefit analysis shows that implementing a new cloud-based IT infrastructure will significantly reduce operational expenses for Tata Consultancy services. However, the proposed solution involves migrating sensitive client data to a third-party cloud provider. Which of the following actions best demonstrates adherence to responsible implementation and regulatory compliance in this scenario? Option A. Conduct a thorough due diligence on the cloud provider's data security certifications, data handling policies, and compliance with relevant data protection regulations before finalizing the migration plan. Option B. Proceed with the implementation immediately to realize the cost savings, assuming the cloud provider's standard security measures are adequate for protecting client data. Option C. Negotiate a lower price with the cloud provider by agreeing to a reduced level of data security oversight. Option D. Implement the new infrastructure first, and then initiate a review of the cloud provider's compliance with data protection laws to address any issues that arise. The correct answer is B. Proceed with the implementation immediately to realize the cost savings, assuming the cloud provider's standard security measures are adequate for protecting client data. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the immediate financial benefits of a proposed IT system upgrade against potential long-term risks and compliance obligations. The pressure to implement quickly for cost savings can lead to overlooking critical regulatory requirements, particularly concerning data privacy and security, which are paramount in the IT services sector. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a comprehensive risk assessment and due diligence process that explicitly includes regulatory compliance. This aligns with the principles of responsible technology deployment and data stewardship. By ensuring that the proposed system adheres to all relevant data protection laws and industry best practices before implementation, the organization mitigates legal, financial, and reputational damage. This proactive stance demonstrates a commitment to ethical conduct and client trust, which are foundational in the IT services industry. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on the immediate cost savings without a thorough review of data security protocols would fail to meet the stringent requirements of data privacy regulations. Such a failure could lead to significant penalties, legal action, and loss of client confidence. Another incorrect approach that assumes existing security measures are sufficient without specific validation for the new system risks overlooking vulnerabilities introduced by the upgrade, potentially exposing sensitive client data. This constitutes a breach of professional duty and regulatory noncompliance. A third incorrect approach that delays the compliance review until after implementation creates a reactive and high-risk situation where any discovered noncompliance would necessitate costly and disruptive remediation, potentially impacting ongoing service delivery and client contracts. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that integrates technical feasibility, financial viability, and regulatory compliance from the outset. This involves establishing clear criteria for evaluating proposed IT solutions, including mandatory compliance checks against relevant data protection and cybersecurity laws. When faced with competing priorities, such as cost reduction versus compliance, the framework should mandate that compliance is a non-negotiable prerequisite, with any deviations requiring formal risk acceptance and mitigation plans approved by senior management and legal counsel. Question 6. The control framework reveals a critical security control that requires a specific multi-factor authentication process for all system access. During a critical project phase, the assigned IT administrator discovers a temporary technical glitch, preventing the standard multi-factor authentication from functioning for a limited set of users. The project deadline is imminent, and delaying access for these users would significantly jeopardize the project's timely delivery and incur substantial penalties. The administrator is considering how to proceed. Option A. Proceed with a less secure single-factor authentication method for the affected users, assuming the risk is minimal given the short duration and the project's critical nature, without formal documentation or approval. Option B. Halt all project activities until the multi-factor authentication system is fully restored to its optimal functioning state, regardless of the project deadline or potential penalties. Option C. Document the technical glitch and the proposed temporary workaround, seeking immediate approval from the designated authority for the deviation and its risk mitigation plan before implementing any alternative access method. Option D. Temporarily disable the multi-factor authentication for the affected users to ensure project continuity and address the technical glitch after the project deadline. The correct answer is C. Document the technical glitch and the proposed temporary workaround, seeking immediate approval from the designated authority for the deviation and its risk mitigation plan before implementing any alternative access method. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between delivering a project within a tight deadline and ensuring the integrity of the control framework. The pressure to meet client expectations and avoid penalties for delays can tempt individuals to bypass or weaken established controls. This requires careful judgment to balance project timelines with the non-negotiable requirement for robust internal controls, which are fundamental to TCS's operational integrity and compliance. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes the adherence to the established control framework, even when faced with project pressures. This aligns with TCS's commitment to quality, risk management, and regulatory compliance. By documenting the deviation and seeking appropriate authorization, the team demonstrates accountability and transparency. This proactive measure ensures that any deviation is understood, assessed for risk, and formally approved, thereby maintaining the integrity of the control environment and mitigating potential future issues. This upholds ethical standards and demonstrates a commitment to long-term operational stability over short-term expediency. An incorrect approach that involves proceeding with the project without formally documenting or seeking approval for the controlled deviation is professionally unacceptable. This constitutes a failure to adhere to internal policies and procedures, which are designed to safeguard the organization. It creates a significant risk of undetected errors, data breaches, or non-compliance with relevant regulations, potentially leading to financial penalties, reputational damage, and loss of client trust. Such an action undermines the control framework and fosters a culture where shortcuts are accepted, increasing the likelihood of more serious breaches in the future. Another incorrect approach, which is to delay the project indefinitely until all controls are perfectly implemented, is also professionally flawed. While adherence to controls is crucial, an absolute refusal to proceed without perfect implementation, especially when minor, documented deviations are being managed, can lead to significant client dissatisfaction and contractual breaches. This demonstrates a lack of pragmatic problem-solving and an inability to balance risk with business needs. It fails to recognize that control frameworks often allow for managed deviations with appropriate oversight. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a clear understanding of the control framework and its objectives. When a potential deviation arises, the professional should first assess its impact on the control's effectiveness and the associated risks. This assessment should then be documented. Following this, the professional should consult internal policies regarding deviations and seek guidance from their manager or the relevant control function. If the deviation is deemed necessary and manageable, the process of formal documentation and seeking appropriate authorization must be followed. This structured approach ensures that decisions are informed, transparent, and aligned with the organization's risk appetite and compliance obligations. Question 7. Risk assessment procedures indicate a significant potential risk to the project timeline due to an unforeseen technical dependency. The project manager is under considerable pressure to deliver the project by the agreed-upon deadline. Which of the following represents the most professionally sound approach to managing this identified risk? Option A. The project manager should unilaterally decide to deprioritize the mitigation of this risk to ensure the project deadline is met, and only document the decision. Option B. Immediately convene a meeting with the technical leads and relevant stakeholders to discuss the risk, explore potential mitigation strategies, and document the agreed-upon plan, even if it requires a slight adjustment to the immediate task schedule. Option C. Proceed with the current task schedule, assuming the technical dependency will resolve itself or that the impact will be minimal, and document the risk for future reference. Option D. Inform the client that the project timeline is at risk due to the technical dependency, and await their instructions on how to proceed. The correct answer is B. Immediately convene a meeting with the technical leads and relevant stakeholders to discuss the risk, explore potential mitigation strategies, and document the agreed-upon plan, even if it requires a slight adjustment to the immediate task schedule. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the need for timely project delivery with the imperative to adhere to established risk management protocols. The pressure to meet deadlines can tempt individuals to bypass or downplay identified risks, potentially leading to significant negative consequences for TCS and its clients. Careful judgment is required to ensure that risk mitigation efforts are proportionate to the identified threats and do not unduly impede progress. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a structured and documented process for evaluating and responding to identified risks. This aligns with the principles of good corporate governance and robust project management, which are implicitly expected in a professional setting like TCS. By engaging relevant stakeholders and documenting decisions, it ensures transparency, accountability, and a defensible record of actions taken. This proactive and systematic approach minimizes the likelihood of unforeseen issues derailing the project and protects the organization from potential liabilities. An incorrect approach that involves proceeding without a formal risk review and mitigation plan is professionally unacceptable. This demonstrates a disregard for established procedures and a failure to adequately assess potential threats. Such an approach could lead to significant project delays, cost overruns, reputational damage, and even legal repercussions if client commitments are not met due to unmanaged risks. It also represents a failure to uphold professional diligence and a lack of commitment to quality assurance. Another incorrect approach, which is to unilaterally decide to ignore a high-impact risk due to time constraints, is ethically and professionally unsound. This bypasses the collective judgment of the team and stakeholders, potentially leading to a decision that is not in the best interest of the project or the client. It also creates a single point of failure in decision-making and can foster a culture where critical issues are overlooked. This demonstrates a lack of accountability and a failure to follow established escalation and decision-making processes. A further incorrect approach, which is to document the risk but take no action to mitigate it, is also professionally deficient. While documentation is important, it is only one part of the risk management process. Failing to implement mitigation strategies for identified risks, especially those with high impact, leaves the project vulnerable to those threats. This approach suggests a superficial understanding of risk management, where the focus is on compliance with documentation rather than on proactive risk reduction. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a clear understanding of the organization's risk management framework. When a risk is identified, the professional should 1. Document the risk thoroughly, including its potential impact and likelihood. 2. Assess the risk against predefined criteria, e.g., impact, likelihood, urgency. 3. Consult with relevant stakeholders, including project managers, technical leads, and potentially client representatives, to discuss the risk and potential mitigation strategies. 4. Develop and document a mitigation plan, including assigned responsibilities and timelines. 5. Obtain necessary approvals for the mitigation plan, especially if it involves significant resource allocation or impacts project timelines. 6. Monitor the effectiveness of the mitigation plan throughout the project lifecycle. If time constraints are a factor, the focus should be on finding efficient and effective mitigation strategies that can be implemented quickly, rather than on skipping the process entirely. Question 8. Consider a scenario where a critical software module for a key client is nearing its deployment deadline. The testing team discovers a significant, albeit intermittent, performance issue that is difficult to replicate consistently. The project manager is pressuring the team to deploy the module as scheduled, suggesting that the issue might be minor and can be addressed in a subsequent patch. The team lead is concerned about deploying a potentially unstable module and its impact on the client's operations and TCS's reputation. Option A. Proceed with the deployment as scheduled, assuming the issue is minor and can be fixed in a post-deployment patch to meet the client's deadline and avoid contractual penalties. Option B. Escalate the performance issue to senior management and the client, providing detailed documentation of the issue and its potential impact, and recommend delaying deployment until the issue is resolved or a clear mitigation plan is agreed upon. Option C. Inform the client that the issue exists but downplay its severity, assuring them it will be resolved quickly after deployment, and proceed with the deployment. Option D. Instruct the testing team to focus only on the critical functionalities and ignore the intermittent performance issue for the current deployment, prioritizing the deadline over thorough testing. The correct answer is B. Escalate the performance issue to senior management and the client, providing detailed documentation of the issue and its potential impact, and recommend delaying deployment until the issue is resolved or a clear mitigation plan is agreed upon. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between delivering a project within a tight deadline and ensuring the integrity of the testing process. The pressure to meet client expectations and avoid penalties can tempt individuals to compromise on quality assurance. Careful judgment is required to balance business needs with ethical obligations and regulatory compliance. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes adherence to established testing protocols and quality standards, even under pressure. This aligns with the principles of professional integrity and the implicit regulatory expectation that services delivered by TCS will meet a certain standard of quality and reliability. By escalating the issue and seeking clarification, The team demonstrates a commitment to transparency and responsible problem solving, which are crucial for maintaining client trust and upholding the company's reputation. This proactive communication also allows for informed decision-making by management, who can then assess the risks and allocate resources appropriately, potentially renegotiating timelines or scope if necessary. An incorrect approach that involves bypassing the established testing procedures to meet the deadline would be professionally unacceptable. This would constitute a failure to adhere to internal quality control policies, which are often designed to meet industry best practices and client service level agreements. Such a shortcut could lead to the delivery of a flawed product, resulting in significant reputational damage, potential financial penalties for TCS, and a breach of client trust. It also exposes the company to risks of non-compliance with any contractual obligations related to quality and performance. Another incorrect approach, such as proceeding with the testing without proper documentation or validation, would also be a failure. This lack of thoroughness undermines the auditability of the testing process and makes it difficult to identify the root cause of any future issues. It suggests a disregard for the systematic nature of quality assurance and could be seen as a deliberate attempt to obscure potential shortcomings. This can lead to regulatory scrutiny if the delivered product fails to meet expected performance standards. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a clear understanding of internal policies and procedures, a commitment to ethical conduct, and open communication. When faced with conflicting pressures, professionals should first assess the potential impact of any proposed shortcut on the quality of the deliverable and the client's satisfaction. If there is a risk of compromise, the next step is to escalate the issue to the appropriate stakeholders, clearly articulating the challenges and potential consequences. This allows for a collaborative approach to finding a solution that upholds professional standards and protects the interests of all parties involved. Question 9. The investigation demonstrates that a TCS consultant, while working on site with a financial services client, has discovered evidence of unauthorized access to sensitive customer data. The client's senior management has expressed a strong desire to contain the information internally and delay any external notification until a full internal assessment is completed, fearing reputational damage and regulatory penalties. What is the most appropriate immediate course of action for the TCS consultant? Option A. Advise the client on methods to secure the data and prevent further access, deferring any reporting until the client has a clear understanding of the breach's scope. Option B. Directly inform the client's legal counsel about the potential breach, bypassing internal TCS escalation to ensure legal compliance. Option C. Agree with the client's request to conduct a preliminary internal assessment and report findings to management before any external communication. Option D. Immediately escalate the discovery to the designated TCS incident response team and inform the client of the necessity to follow established regulatory and contractual reporting procedures. The correct answer is D. Immediately escalate the discovery to the designated TCS incident response team and inform the client of the necessity to follow established regulatory and contractual reporting procedures. Explanation. The investigation demonstrates a scenario where a TCS employee, acting as a consultant for a client in the financial services sector, has identified a potential data breach. The challenge lies in balancing the client's immediate desire for damage control and information suppression with the regulatory obligations and ethical responsibilities of both the employee and TCS. The financial services industry is heavily regulated, and prompt, transparent reporting of security incidents is paramount to maintaining client trust and adhering to legal frameworks. The correct approach involves immediate escalation and adherence to established incident response protocols. This aligns with best professional practice by prioritizing regulatory compliance, client protection, and ethical conduct. Specifically, it upholds the principles of data privacy and security mandated by relevant financial regulations, assuming a jurisdiction like the UK with FCA regulations or similar, which emphasize timely reporting of significant operational or security incidents. This approach ensures that the client is informed appropriately, regulatory bodies are notified if required, and a thorough investigation can commence without undue delay or obstruction. An incorrect approach would be to delay reporting or attempt to conceal the incident. This failure to escalate promptly constitutes a significant regulatory and ethical breach. It undermines the client's ability to mitigate further damage, potentially violates data protection laws, e.g., GDPR if applicable, or similar data breach notification requirements, and erodes trust. Another incorrect approach might be to provide incomplete or misleading information to the client or internal stakeholders. This is ethically unsound and could lead to further regulatory scrutiny and penalties, as it obstructs a proper assessment of the incident's scope and impact. A third incorrect approach could be to prioritize the client's immediate financial interests over regulatory obligations, such as by suggesting the client avoid reporting to minimize potential fines, which is a clear violation of professional integrity and potentially illegal. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with identifying the nature of the incident and its potential impact. This should be followed by an immediate review of internal policies and relevant external regulations. The next step is to escalate the issue through the appropriate channels within TCS and to the client, ensuring all communication is factual and timely. Transparency, adherence to protocol, and a commitment to ethical conduct should guide every decision, especially when dealing with sensitive data and regulated industries. Question 10. Upon reviewing the proposed testing strategy for a critical client project involving sensitive customer financial data, the development team suggests using a direct copy of the production database for their integration testing environment to expedite the process. They propose to delete the data after testing is complete. What is the most appropriate and compliant approach to ensure data security and regulatory adherence? Option A. Implement a robust data anonymization and masking solution to create a synthetic or de-identified dataset for the testing environment, ensuring no actual production data is exposed. Option B. Proceed with using a direct copy of the production database for testing, with a strict protocol for immediate deletion after the testing phase concludes. Option C. Request the client to provide a separate, pre-anonymized dataset specifically for testing purposes, even if it delays the project timeline. Option D. Utilize a subset of the production data, removing only personally identifiable information, PI, through manual review, and then use this subset for testing. The correct answer is A. Implement a robust data anonymization and masking solution to create a synthetic or de-identified dataset for the testing environment, ensuring no actual production data is exposed. Explanation. This scenario presents a common implementation challenge in large-scale IT projects, particularly within organizations like TCS that operate under strict client confidentiality and data protection agreements. The challenge lies in balancing the need for efficient development and testing with the absolute requirement to protect sensitive client data. The regulatory framework governing such projects, especially when dealing with financial or personal information, typically mandates robust data anonymization and security protocols. Failure to adhere to these can result in severe legal penalties, reputational damage, and loss of client trust. The correct approach involves a systematic and verifiable process of data anonymization and masking before any data is used in non-production environments. This aligns with principles of data privacy by design and by default, as mandated by various data protection regulations. It ensures that even if a breach occurs in a testing environment, the sensitive information of the client's end users remains protected. This proactive measure is a cornerstone of responsible data handling and a key expectation in client engagements. Incorrect approaches often stem from a misunderstanding of the risks or a desire for expediency. Using production data directly in testing environments, even with the intention of deleting it later, is a critical failure. It exposes sensitive data to a wider range of individuals and systems, increasing the attack surface and the likelihood of accidental disclosure or misuse. This directly contravenes data protection principles that require minimizing data exposure. Similarly, relying on informal assurances or ad hoc masking methods without proper validation is insufficient. It lacks the auditable controls necessary to demonstrate compliance and leaves the project vulnerable to human error or oversight. These approaches demonstrate a lack of due diligence and a disregard for the potential consequences of data breaches. The professional decision-making process in such situations should involve a risk-based assessment. This means identifying potential data-related risks early in the project lifecycle, understanding the applicable regulatory requirements, and implementing controls commensurate with those risks. It requires clear communication with stakeholders about data handling policies and procedures, and a commitment to rigorous testing and validation of all data security measures. When in doubt, consulting with legal and compliance teams is essential to ensure adherence to all relevant regulations and contractual obligations. Question 11. Quality control measures reveal that a critical customer-facing application is experiencing intermittent performance degradation, impacting user experience and potentially transaction processing times. The development team is under pressure to resolve this issue immediately. One proposed solution involves applying a quick fix to a specific module that appears to be the source of the slowdown, without a comprehensive investigation into the underlying architectural or data-related causes. Another suggestion is to temporarily disable a non-essential feature that seems to correlate with the slowdown, even though its direct causal link is unproven. A third approach advocates for a full system rollback to a previous stable version, despite the significant data loss and disruption this would entail. Option A. Apply a quick patch to the suspected problematic module, prioritizing immediate restoration of performance without extensive investigation into the root cause. Option B. Temporarily disable a feature that shows a correlation with the performance issue, even without definitive proof of causation, to alleviate the immediate symptoms. Option C. Conduct a thorough root cause analysis to identify the fundamental reasons for the performance degradation, document findings, and implement a solution that addresses the core issue, followed by rigorous testing and monitoring. Option D. Roll back the entire system to a previous stable version to eliminate the current performance issues, accepting the associated data loss and disruption. The correct answer is C. Conduct a thorough root cause analysis to identify the fundamental reasons for the performance degradation, document findings, and implement a solution that addresses the core issue, followed by rigorous testing and monitoring. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the immediate need for a functional system with the long-term implications of technical debt and potential regulatory noncompliance. The pressure to deliver quickly can lead to shortcuts that, while seemingly efficient in the short term, can create significant problems down the line, including increased maintenance costs, reduced system stability, and potential breaches of data privacy regulations. Careful judgment is required to identify solutions that are both expedient and sustainable. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a thorough understanding of the root cause of the performance degradation before implementing a fix. This aligns with principles of good software engineering and, importantly, with regulatory expectations for systems handling sensitive data. By conducting a root cause analysis, the team ensures that the implemented solution addresses the underlying issue rather than just a symptom. This proactive stance minimizes the risk of recurring problems and demonstrates due diligence in maintaining system integrity and security, which are often mandated by data protection laws. Furthermore, documenting the analysis and the chosen solution provides an audit trail, essential for demonstrating compliance and for future troubleshooting. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on a quick patch without understanding the cause is professionally unacceptable. This is because it risks introducing new bugs or exacerbating existing ones, leading to further performance issues or even system failures. From a regulatory perspective, if the system handles personal data, such a superficial fix could lead to a breach of data integrity or security, violating regulations like the General Data Protection Regulation, GDPR, or similar frameworks that mandate robust data protection measures. Another incorrect approach, involving bypassing established change control procedures, is a direct violation of internal governance and often external regulatory requirements for auditable and controlled system modifications. This bypass creates a lack of accountability and makes it impossible to track changes, which is a critical failure in maintaining system security and compliance. The professional reasoning process for similar situations should involve a structured approach. First, clearly define the problem and its impact. Second, gather all relevant data and perform a thorough root cause analysis. Third, evaluate potential solutions based on their effectiveness, efficiency, long-term impact, and compliance with relevant regulations and internal policies. Fourth, document the chosen solution and the rationale behind it. Finally, implement the solution following established change management processes and conduct post-implementation testing and monitoring. This systematic approach ensures that decisions are informed, defensible, and aligned with professional and regulatory standards. Question 12. Examination of the data shows that a critical new client management system is nearing its deployment deadline. The development team has identified that extensive testing with realistic data is essential for ensuring system stability and user adoption. However, the available test environments are currently configured with live, sensitive client and employee data due to time constraints in setting up separate, anonymized datasets. The project manager is under pressure to meet the go-live date. Which of the following approaches best balances the need for thorough testing with the imperative to protect sensitive information and comply with data handling regulations? Option A. Proceed with testing using the live data, relying on existing general IT security protocols to safeguard the information during the testing phase. Option B. Implement a phased testing strategy where initial testing is conducted using anonymized or pseudonymized data, followed by controlled testing with a carefully managed subset of live data in a highly secured, isolated environment, with strict access controls and audit trails. Option C. Request an exemption from data privacy regulations for the testing period, citing the critical nature of the system deployment and the time pressures. Option D. Immediately halt all testing and delay deployment until a comprehensive, secure, and fully anonymized test dataset can be meticulously prepared, regardless of the impact on the project timeline. The correct answer is A. Proceed with testing using the live data, relying on existing general IT security protocols to safeguard the information during the testing phase. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common implementation challenge in IT projects, particularly within a large organization like TCS. The core challenge lies in balancing the need for rapid deployment of a new system with the imperative to adhere to established data privacy regulations and internal security policies. The pressure to meet aggressive timelines can create a temptation to bypass or inadequately address critical compliance steps, leading to potential breaches and significant reputational and financial damage. The complexity arises from the interconnectedness of data, the diverse user base, and the evolving regulatory landscape. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach emphasizes a phased implementation with robust data anonymization and pseudonymization techniques applied during the initial testing and development stages. This aligns with the principles of data minimization and privacy by design, which are fundamental to data protection regulations such as GDPR, General Data Protection Regulation, if this were a relevant jurisdiction, or equivalent principles within the Indian regulatory framework governing data handling by IT service providers. By using anonymized or pseudonymized data, the project team can effectively test the system's functionality and performance without exposing sensitive personal information. This proactive measure mitigates the risk of data breaches during development and testing, ensuring compliance with data protection laws and internal policies that mandate the protection of customer and employee data. It demonstrates a commitment to responsible data stewardship and builds trust with stakeholders. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves proceeding with the full deployment using live, sensitive data for initial testing. This is a direct violation of data privacy principles and likely contravenes specific clauses within Indian data protection laws and TCS's internal data handling policies. It exposes the organization to significant risks of unauthorized access, data leakage, and potential penalties for noncompliance. Another incorrect approach is to delay the deployment indefinitely due to concerns about data privacy without proposing concrete mitigation strategies. While caution is necessary, an indefinite delay without a plan to address the privacy concerns is professionally inefficient and fails to meet business objectives. It suggests a lack of proactive problem solving and an inability to navigate regulatory requirements effectively. A third incorrect approach is to rely solely on general IT security measures without specific data privacy controls. While general security is important, it does not adequately address the unique requirements of handling personal data. Specific anonymization, pseudonymization, and access control mechanisms tailored to data privacy are essential and cannot be substituted by broader security protocols. This approach fails to meet the specific obligations imposed by data protection legislation. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a risk-based approach to implementation. This involves identifying potential compliance risks early in the project lifecycle, assessing their impact, and developing mitigation strategies. A structured approach, incorporating privacy by design principles, regular compliance reviews, and clear communication with legal and compliance teams, is crucial. When faced with conflicting pressures, professionals must prioritize regulatory adherence and ethical conduct, seeking guidance from subject matter experts and escalating concerns when necessary. The decision-making process should always weigh the potential consequences of noncompliance against the benefits of timely delivery, ensuring that the former never outweighs the latter. Question 13. Performance analysis shows that the implementation of new features for a critical client system is behind schedule. The project manager is under pressure to meet the go-live date to avoid contractual penalties. The team has completed the development of the new features and has performed unit testing, but has not yet conducted comprehensive regression testing or user acceptance testing. UAT. The project manager is considering deploying the new features directly to production to meet the deadline, arguing that the new features are independent of existing functionalities. What is the most professionally responsible course of action? Option A. Skip regression testing, but proceed with UAT to ensure the new features meet user needs. Option B. Deploy the new features to production and inform the client that post-deployment monitoring will be intensified to catch any issues. Option C. Conduct thorough regression testing and UAT and communicate the potential delay and associated risks to the client, proposing a revised go-live date. Option D. Deploy the new features directly to production to meet the deadline, as the project manager believes they are independent of existing functionalities. Correct answer is C. Conduct thorough regression testing and UAT and communicate the potential delay and associated risks to the client, proposing a revised go-live date. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent tension between delivering a project within a tight deadline and ensuring the integrity of the implemented solution. The pressure to meet client expectations and avoid penalties for delays can tempt teams to cut corners, which can lead to significant technical debt and potential compliance issues. Careful judgment is required to balance these competing demands. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a thorough and systematic validation process. This aligns with the principles of quality assurance and risk management, which are implicitly expected in professional IT services. By conducting comprehensive testing, including regression testing and user acceptance testing, the team ensures that the new features function as intended without negatively impacting existing functionalities. This proactive approach minimizes the risk of deploying a flawed system, thereby safeguarding the client's operations and TCS's reputation. Adherence to established testing methodologies and documentation practices also supports auditability and future maintenance, crucial for long-term project success and client trust. An incorrect approach that involves skipping regression testing would be professionally unacceptable. This failure directly contravenes the principle of ensuring system stability. Regression testing is specifically designed to identify unintended side effects of new code on existing functionality. Omitting it increases the likelihood of introducing critical bugs that could disrupt the client's business operations, leading to financial losses and reputational damage for both the client and TCS. Ethically, it represents a breach of professional duty to deliver a reliable service. Another incorrect approach, such as deploying the new features directly to production without any form of user acceptance testing, UAT, is also professionally unsound. UAT is the final gatekeeper, ensuring that the system meets the end user's actual needs and workflows. Skipping UAT means that potential usability issues or functional gaps that only become apparent in a real-world context might be missed. This can lead to user frustration, decreased productivity, and a failure to achieve the intended business benefits of the new features, violating the implicit contract of delivering value. A third incorrect approach, focusing solely on the successful deployment of new features without considering their integration with existing systems, is equally problematic. This narrow focus ignores the interconnectedness of modern software systems. Failure to test integration points can lead to data corruption, system incompatibilities, and cascading failures across different modules or even entirely separate systems. This demonstrates a lack of holistic understanding of the system architecture and a failure to manage interdependencies, which is a fundamental aspect of professional software development and deployment. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a risk-based assessment. Teams should identify critical functionalities, potential impact of failures, and the likelihood of such failures. This assessment should inform the scope and rigor of testing. Open communication with the client regarding potential risks and trade-offs between speed and thoroughness is essential. Establishing clear quality gates and rollback plans provides further layers of safety. Ultimately, prioritizing the long-term stability and reliability of the delivered solution over short-term expediency is a hallmark of professional integrity. Question 14. The risk matrix shows that a proposed quick fix to ensure GDPR compliance for customer data processing introduces a high likelihood of system instability, while a more robust, phased approach would take longer but significantly reduce this instability risk. Which implementation strategy best balances regulatory compliance with operational integrity? Option A. Delay any implementation until a perfect, risk-free solution can be developed, regardless of the GDPR compliance deadline. Option B. Implement the quick fix and simultaneously initiate a separate project to address system instability, accepting the risk of concurrent issues. Option C. Implement the quick fix immediately to achieve GDPR compliance and address potential system instability as it arises. Option D. Prioritize a phased implementation that includes thorough risk assessment, testing, and mitigation strategies before full deployment, even if it extends the timeline for full GDPR compliance. The correct answer is C. Implement the quick fix immediately to achieve GDPR compliance and address potential system instability as it arises. Explanation. This scenario presents a common implementation challenge where a new regulatory requirement, the GDPR, General Data Protection Regulation, impacts an existing IT system. The challenge lies in balancing the need for rapid compliance with the potential for introducing new vulnerabilities or operational disruptions. The risk matrix, a standard tool for assessing and prioritizing risks, highlights that the proposed quick fix, while addressing the immediate GDPR concern, introduces a high likelihood of system instability. This instability, in turn, could lead to data breaches or service disruption, which themselves carry significant regulatory and reputational consequences under GDPR and other relevant data protection laws. The correct approach involves a phased implementation that prioritizes a thorough risk assessment and mitigation strategy before full deployment. This aligns with the principles of data protection by design and by default, as mandated by GDPR Article 25. It ensures that the technical and organizational measures implemented are robust and that potential risks are identified and addressed proactively. This approach demonstrates due diligence and a commitment to maintaining system integrity and data security, which are core tenets of regulatory compliance and professional responsibility. An incorrect approach would be to proceed with the quick fix without adequate testing or risk mitigation. This would represent a failure to adhere to the principles of data protection by design and by default, potentially leading to breaches of GDPR Article 5, principles relating to processing of personal data, including integrity and confidentiality, and Article 32, security of processing. Such a failure could result in significant fines, reputational damage, and loss of customer trust. Another incorrect approach would be to delay implementation indefinitely due to the perceived complexity, which would also violate the spirit and letter of GDPR requirement for timely compliance with data protection obligations. This inaction could be seen as a disregard for data subject rights and a failure to implement appropriate technical and organizational measures. Professionals should employ a structured decision-making process that begins with a clear understanding of the regulatory requirements. This involves identifying the specific obligations and their implications for existing systems. Next, a comprehensive risk assessment should be conducted, considering both the risks of non-compliance and the risks associated with proposed solutions. This assessment should inform the selection of an implementation strategy that balances compliance needs with operational stability and security. Finally, continuous monitoring and review are essential to ensure that implemented solutions remain effective and compliant with evolving regulations. Question 15. Analysis of the most appropriate strategy for deploying a critical system update within a highly regulated environment, considering the need for extensive testing and the protection of sensitive customer data when faced with aggressive project deadlines. Option A. Conduct thorough testing of the new features using live, unanonymized customer data in a dedicated testing environment to ensure realistic performance metrics. Option B. Proceed with a full, immediate deployment of the update to meet the deadline, deferring comprehensive data privacy checks to a post-deployment audit. Option C. Implement a phased rollout of the update, ensuring all sensitive customer data used in testing environments is rigorously anonymized and that security protocols are maintained throughout the testing and initial deployment phases. Option D. Halt the deployment indefinitely until all conceivable risks, however minor, are completely eliminated, even if this means missing critical business objectives. The correct answer is C. Implement a phased rollout of the update, ensuring all sensitive customer data used in testing environments is rigorously anonymized and that security protocols are maintained throughout the testing and initial deployment phases. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common implementation challenge in large-scale IT projects, particularly within a regulated industry like financial services, which TCS often serves. The challenge lies in balancing the need for rapid deployment of a critical system update with the imperative to adhere to stringent data privacy regulations. The pressure to meet aggressive deadlines, coupled with the potential for significant business impact if the system fails or data is compromised, creates a high-stakes environment where shortcuts can have severe consequences. The project manager must navigate conflicting priorities: business urgency versus regulatory compliance and risk mitigation. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach prioritizes a phased rollout with robust data anonymization and security protocols. This aligns with the principles of data protection by design and by default, as mandated by regulations like the General Data Protection Regulation, GDPR, if the jurisdiction were the EU, or similar principles embedded in UK Data Protection Law e.g. the Data Protection Act 2018. Anonymizing sensitive customer data before it is exposed to the testing environment significantly reduces the risk of a data breach during the testing phase. A phased rollout allows for controlled exposure, enabling the identification and remediation of issues in a less critical environment before full deployment. This demonstrates a commitment to both system integrity and regulatory compliance, representing best professional practice by proactively mitigating risks and upholding legal obligations. Incorrect approach is analysis. One incorrect approach involves proceeding with full deployment without adequate testing of the new features, especially concerning data handling. This directly violates the principle of due diligence and responsible system implementation. It exposes the organization to significant regulatory penalties for noncompliance with data protection laws, potential reputational damage, and loss of customer trust. Another incorrect approach is to delay the deployment indefinitely due to perceived risks without implementing a structured risk mitigation plan. While caution is necessary, indefinite delay without a clear path forward can lead to missed business opportunities and operational inefficiencies. It may not be justifiable if a reasonable risk-based approach to testing and deployment could be established. A third incorrect approach is to conduct testing using live, unanonymized customer data in a non-production environment. This is a severe regulatory and ethical failure, directly contravening data privacy laws that mandate the protection of personal data. Such an action would likely result in substantial fines, legal action, and irreparable damage to the company's reputation. Professional reasoning. Professionals facing such implementation challenges should adopt a risk-based decision-making framework. This involves 1. Identifying all potential risks, including technical, operational, and regulatory risks. 2. Assessing the likelihood and impact of each risk. 3. Developing mitigation strategies for high-priority risks. 4. Prioritizing actions based on their effectiveness in reducing risk and their alignment with business objectives and regulatory requirements. 5. Communicating transparently with stakeholders about risks, mitigation plans, and deployment timelines. 6. Ensuring that any proposed solution adheres to the privacy by design and privacy by default principles, especially when dealing with personal data. 7. Seeking legal and compliance expertise to validate the chosen approach against relevant regulations. Question 16. The audit findings indicate a potential discrepancy in the data validation logic within a recently implemented customer relationship management (CRM) module, which could lead to inaccurate customer segmentation. The project team is under pressure to meet aggressive quarterly targets and is considering several immediate actions to address this. Option A. Conduct a thorough root cause analysis of the data validation discrepancy. Develop a comprehensive remediation plan with rigorous testing and validation, and engage with relevant compliance officers and stakeholders to ensure adherence to data integrity standards before deploying any fixes. Option B. Manually correct the segmented customer data for the current reporting period and postpone any technical fixes to the CRM module until a less busy period. Option C. Immediately deploy a quick fix to the data validation logic based on initial assumptions, without extensive testing, to ensure customer segmentation remains operational for the current quarter's reporting. Option D. Document the discrepancy but defer any remediation efforts until after the current quarter's reporting cycle concludes, citing the pressure to meet targets as justification for the delay. The correct answer is A. Conduct a thorough root cause analysis of the data validation discrepancy. Develop a comprehensive remediation plan with rigorous testing and validation, and engage with relevant compliance officers and stakeholders to ensure adherence to data integrity standards before deploying any fixes. Explanation: this scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the immediate need for operational efficiency with the long-term implications of data integrity and regulatory compliance. The audit findings highlight a potential gap in the implementation of a critical system, which could have far-reaching consequences if not addressed appropriately. The core of the challenge lies in determining the most effective and compliant method to rectify the identified issue without compromising ongoing business operations or violating data protection principles. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a thorough, systematic, and compliant resolution. By initiating a detailed root cause analysis, it ensures that the underlying issues are understood and addressed, preventing recurrence. The subsequent development of a remediation plan, involving rigorous testing and validation, guarantees that the fix is effective and does not introduce new problems. Crucially, engaging with the relevant regulatory bodies and stakeholders demonstrates transparency and adherence to compliance frameworks, which is paramount in maintaining trust and avoiding penalties. This approach aligns with principles of good governance, risk management, and ethical data handling, as expected within the professional landscape governed by TCS's operational and ethical guidelines. An incorrect approach that involves immediately deploying a patch without comprehensive testing is professionally unacceptable. This bypasses essential quality assurance steps, risking further system instability, data corruption, or security vulnerabilities. Such an action would likely violate internal TCS quality control policies and potentially external regulatory requirements concerning system reliability and data integrity. Another incorrect approach, which is to ignore the audit findings due to perceived minor impact, is a severe ethical and professional failure. It demonstrates a disregard for internal controls, risk management, and the principle of continuous improvement. This negligence could lead to significant compliance breaches, reputational damage, and financial penalties if the issue escalates. Furthermore, failing to document the remediation process and communicate with stakeholders represents a breakdown in transparency and accountability, which are fundamental to professional conduct and regulatory adherence. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured approach. First, thoroughly understand the audit findings and their potential impact. Second, conduct a comprehensive risk assessment to prioritize remediation efforts. Third, develop a detailed plan that includes technical solutions, testing protocols, and communication strategies. Fourth, consult relevant internal policies, ethical guidelines, and any applicable regulatory frameworks. Finally, execute the plan with diligence, ensuring proper documentation and stakeholder engagement throughout the process. Question 17. The efficiency study reveals that a significant portion of the reported cost savings are based on projections that have not yet materialized and may not be achievable. The project lead is eager to present these positive results to the client to secure future business. You are aware that presenting these unverified savings would be misleading. Option A. Discreetly omit the specific details about the realization of savings from the report, focusing only on the overall efficiency improvement metrics. Option B. Proceed with reporting the projected savings as if they were realized, assuming the client will understand that these are forward-looking estimates. Option C. Immediately inform the project lead about the discrepancy, clearly outlining the unverified nature of the projected savings and recommending that only actual, verifiable savings be reported to the client. Option D. Adjust the reporting methodology to emphasize the potential for future savings, downplaying the current lack of realization to present a more optimistic outlook. The correct answer is C. Immediately inform the project lead about the discrepancy, clearly outlining the unverified nature of the projected savings and recommending that only actual, verifiable savings be reported to the client. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the conflict between achieving business objectives, efficiency gains, and maintaining ethical standards, specifically regarding data integrity and client trust. The pressure to deliver positive results from the efficiency study, coupled with the discovery of potentially misleading data, creates a dilemma where personal or team reputation could be compromised by either suppressing the truth or causing significant disruption by revealing it. Careful judgment is required to navigate this situation ethically and professionally. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes transparency, accuracy, and client confidentiality, which are foundational ethical principles in the IT consulting industry. By immediately escalating the issue to the project manager and providing a clear, factual account of the findings, the individual upholds their professional responsibility to deliver honest and reliable information. This aligns with the ethical guidelines that mandate integrity in all business dealings and prevent the dissemination of misleading data, thereby protecting the client's interests and TCS's reputation. An incorrect approach involving the manipulation or selective reporting of data to present a more favorable outcome would constitute a severe ethical failure. This would violate the principle of honesty and could lead to the client making critical business decisions based on flawed information, causing potential financial or operational harm. Such an action would also breach client confidentiality and could result in legal repercussions and irreparable damage to TCS's credibility. Another incorrect approach, such as ignoring the discrepancy or hoping it goes unnoticed, is also professionally unacceptable. This passive stance fails to address a known issue that could impact the client and the project's success. It demonstrates a lack of accountability and professional diligence, potentially leading to the discovery of the issue later, which would be far more damaging than an early, transparent disclosure. This inaction can be interpreted as complicity in data misrepresentation. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with identifying the ethical dilemma. This involves recognizing the conflict between competing interests or values. Next, they should gather all relevant facts objectively, without bias. Then, they should consider the potential consequences of each possible course of action, evaluating them against established ethical codes and professional standards. Finally, they should choose the action that best upholds integrity, transparency, and the interests of all stakeholders, even if it presents short-term challenges. Escalation to appropriate management channels is a crucial step when faced with significant ethical concerns. Question 18. Research into a client's internal project reveals a potential data security vulnerability that, if exploited, could lead to a significant breach of sensitive customer information. The employee discovers this vulnerability during a routine audit of the client's systems, as per the contractual agreement. The employee is aware that reporting this directly to the client's IT department, without involving TCS's internal compliance and legal teams, could be perceived as overstepping their role and potentially jeopardize the ongoing project and the client relationship. What is the most appropriate course of action for the TCS employee? Option A. Discreetly inform a trusted contact within the client's organization who is not directly involved in IT or security. Option B. Immediately report the vulnerability to the client's IT department, emphasizing the urgency and potential impact. Option C. Document the findings thoroughly and escalate the matter to Tata Consultancy Services, internal compliance, and legal departments for guidance on how to proceed. Option D. Ignore the vulnerability to avoid potential conflict and maintain a smooth client relationship, assuming the client will discover it themselves. The correct answer is B. Immediately report the vulnerability to the client's IT department, emphasizing the urgency and potential impact. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between client confidentiality and the potential for harm. The TCS employee is privy to sensitive information that, if misused or disclosed inappropriately, could have significant negative consequences for both the client and potentially other stakeholders. The core of the dilemma lies in balancing the duty of loyalty and confidentiality owed to the client with the broader ethical responsibility to act with integrity and avoid causing harm. Careful judgment is required to navigate this delicate balance without breaching trust or violating professional standards. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a structured, ethical, and compliant resolution. By seeking guidance from internal compliance and legal departments, the employee is adhering to established protocols designed to handle such sensitive situations. This ensures that any action taken is in accordance with Tata Consultancy Services' internal policies, relevant data protection regulations, such as GDPR if applicable to the client's data, or other relevant Indian data privacy laws, and ethical codes of conduct. This approach safeguards client confidentiality while also addressing the potential risks in a responsible and authorized manner, demonstrating a commitment to both client trust and corporate governance. An incorrect approach that involves directly confronting the client's representative without prior consultation with internal experts is professionally unacceptable. This could lead to an escalation of the situation, damage the client relationship, and potentially expose TCS to legal or reputational risks if the information is mishandled or if the employee's actions are perceived as overstepping their authority. Another incorrect approach, such as ignoring the information due to fear of reprisal or discomfort, represents a failure of professional duty and ethical responsibility. This inaction could allow a potentially harmful situation to develop unchecked, leading to greater negative consequences for all parties involved and a breach of the duty of care. Disclosing the information to unauthorized third parties, even with good intentions, would be a severe breach of client confidentiality and likely violate data protection laws and professional ethics. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with identifying the ethical conflict and potential risks. This should be followed by consulting internal policies and seeking guidance from designated compliance or legal departments. Documenting all communications and decisions is crucial. If internal guidance is insufficient or unclear, escalating the issue to higher management or seeking external expert advice, within the bounds of company policy, may be necessary. The ultimate goal is to resolve the situation in a manner that upholds ethical principles, complies with all applicable regulations, and protects the interests of all stakeholders, including the client and the organization. Question 19. Risk assessment procedures indicate that a key client, with whom TCS has a significant ongoing project, has provided financial data that appears to significantly understate their actual revenue for the past quarter. Your direct manager, who is responsible for the client relationship, suggests overlooking the discrepancy to avoid jeopardizing future contract renewals, stating that the client has always been a valuable partner. What is the most appropriate course of action? Option A. Accept the client's provided financial data at face value and proceed with the project, focusing solely on delivering the contracted services. Option B. Escalate the discrepancy to the TCS internal compliance and legal departments for investigation and guidance, while maintaining professional communication with the client regarding the project's progress. Option C. Directly inform the client that their financial data appears inaccurate and that this could have regulatory implications, potentially damaging the relationship. Option D. Advise your manager that the discrepancy should be ignored to protect the client relationship and secure future business, as it is not TCS's direct responsibility to audit client finances. Correct answer is B. Escalate the discrepancy to the TCS internal compliance and legal departments for investigation and guidance, while maintaining professional communication with the client regarding the project's progress. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between client confidentiality and the obligation to report potential regulatory breaches. The pressure to maintain a positive client relationship and secure future business can create a temptation to overlook or downplay serious issues. Careful judgment is required to balance these competing interests ethically and legally. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes adherence to regulatory frameworks and ethical conduct over immediate client appeasement. By escalating the issue internally, The professional ensures that the matter is handled by the appropriate authorities within TCS, who can then conduct a thorough investigation and take necessary corrective actions. This aligns with the principles of integrity, accountability, and compliance, which are fundamental to maintaining trust and upholding the reputation of both the individual and the organization. It also safeguards against potential future liabilities for both TCS and the individual if the issue were to escalate due to inaction. An incorrect approach of ignoring the discrepancy or accepting the client's explanation without further scrutiny would constitute a failure to uphold professional integrity and a potential breach of regulatory obligations. This could lead to significant reputational damage, legal penalties, and loss of client trust if the issue is later discovered. Accepting the client's explanation without independent verification also demonstrates a lack of due diligence and a failure to act in the best interests of the organization and its stakeholders. Another incorrect approach, such as immediately reporting the client to external regulatory bodies without internal consultation, could be premature and damaging to the client relationship and TCS's reputation. While transparency is important, a structured internal escalation process is typically the first step to ensure that issues are investigated thoroughly and appropriately before external reporting is considered, unless immediate and severe harm is evident. This approach also bypasses internal governance and risk management protocols. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a clear understanding of the relevant regulatory framework and internal company policies. When faced with a potential ethical dilemma or regulatory concern, professionals should 1. Identify the core issue and potential risks. 2. Consult relevant policies and ethical guidelines. 3. Gather objective facts and evidence. 4. Seek advice from supervisors or designated compliance officers. 5. Escalate the issue through appropriate internal channels. 6. Document all actions and decisions. 7. Prioritize integrity and compliance in all decisions. Question 20. Benchmark analysis indicates that a TCS employee, while working on a client project, discovers sensitive information suggesting a significant security vulnerability in a product developed by a competitor of their client. This vulnerability, if exploited, could lead to substantial financial losses for the client and potentially impact TCS's reputation if associated with the client's product. The employee is bound by strict confidentiality agreements with their client. What is the most ethically and professionally sound course of action for the TCS employee? Option A. Discreetly inform a trusted senior colleague within TCS about the discovery, hoping they will take appropriate action without formal escalation. Option B. Ignore the information as it pertains to a third party and is outside the scope of the employee's direct responsibilities. To avoid any potential breach of confidentiality, Option C. Escalate the discovery internally to TCS's legal and compliance departments, providing all relevant details for them to assess and manage the situation according to company policy and contractual obligations. Option D. Immediately report the vulnerability to the client's competitor, as this could prevent significant financial harm to the client and protect TCS's reputation. The correct answer is D. Immediately report the vulnerability to the client's competitor, as this could prevent significant financial harm to the client and protect TCS's reputation. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between client confidentiality and the potential for harm to a third party. The employee is privy to sensitive information that, if acted upon, could prevent a significant financial loss for TCS, but doing so would breach a client's trust and potentially violate contractual obligations. The core of the dilemma lies in balancing fiduciary duties to the employer with ethical obligations to clients and the broader principle of professional integrity. Careful judgment is required to navigate these competing interests without compromising professional standards or legal standing. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes adherence to contractual obligations and client confidentiality agreements, which are fundamental tenets of professional services. By escalating the issue through appropriate internal channels, the employee ensures that the situation is handled with the necessary discretion and in accordance with TCS's established policies and legal counsel. This method respects the client's privacy, avoids unauthorized disclosure of sensitive information, and allows TCS to manage the risk in a controlled and compliant manner. It upholds the principle of acting with integrity and in the best interests of all stakeholders, including the client, while protecting TCS from potential legal repercussions. An incorrect approach that involves directly informing the client's competitor about the potential vulnerability is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This action constitutes a breach of client confidentiality, violating the non-disclosure agreements that are standard in such professional engagements. It also demonstrates a lack of integrity and professional conduct, as it involves using privileged information for personal or external gain without authorization. Such a disclosure could lead to severe legal consequences for both the employee and TCS, including lawsuits for breach of contract and damages. Another incorrect approach, which is to ignore the information and take no action, also presents ethical and professional shortcomings. While it avoids a direct breach of confidentiality, it could be construed as negligence or a failure to act in the best interests of TCS, especially if the company suffers losses due to this unaddressed vulnerability. Depending on internal policies and contractual terms, there might be an implied duty to report significant risks that could impact the employer's business. This passive approach fails to proactively manage potential risks and could lead to reputational damage for TCS if the situation escalates, and it is revealed that the company was aware of the issue but did nothing. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured approach. 1. Identify the core ethical and professional conflict. 2. Review relevant company policies, codes of conduct, and contractual obligations. 3. Consult with internal legal or compliance departments to understand legal and ethical implications. 4. Seek guidance from a trusted senior colleague or manager, ensuring confidentiality is maintained. 5. Document all actions taken and decisions made. 6. Prioritize actions that uphold integrity, confidentiality, and legal compliance while mitigating risks.